All right, folks, I want to show you how to make a box for your project. Real simple way. I'll show you a couple different online tools for generating a box like this, from real basic ones to kind of medium complexity ones like this with curved sides to even more complex things. It's great to be able to quickly make a box on the laser cutter for project enclosures or simple UI interfaces. You can see I've added on this one some holes for the buttons of the circuit playground, USB port, etc. So let's start on the computer and then we'll come back here. At some of the web tools for making boxes. I'm going to show you through a few websites. I'll put the links in the video description down below for your reference. The first one I'm going to show you is makeabox.io. This is a very basic box maker. You've got your units over here, the orientation of the box, and then you enter things like the width, the height, and depth of the box. So we could make like a 4 by 5 by 3 inch box, and then the thickness of the material. I'm going to say that we're going to work with 1/8 inch plywood. And then if I want a particular tab width, I can set that here. You'll see what that means in a second. It uses a kind of finger joint to make the box. Most of the time you don't need to mess with these settings over here. The one important thing you might want to keep in mind, if you start using thicker material, the padding and margin you want to be around the size of your material thickness. So at an 1/8 inch, these are fine, but if I was doing like 1/2 inch material, I'd want to change these. That's how far from the edge the box is and how far apart the pieces of the box are from each other. And you want the distance between things when you're laser cutting to be at least the thickness of the material. So once we've got all that stuff in there, let's say download PDF, and here we go. There's the PDF of our box template, and you can see those tabbed fingers. So this is extremely rudimentary for making just a closed box. It gives us 6 sides, the box, and that's about all we've got. I can open this up in a program like Illustrator. What did that call that? Maker box? Yeah. And we can see the lines are very faint, which is what we want for laser cutting. It makes it a little hard to see in the program. But if I wanted to add an interface, knobs, buttons, LEDs, etc., to one of the faces of this box for a controller or something, I could then come in and add circles and squares to cut out other holes and apertures in the box as necessary for the UI I was designing. Okay, so that's basic Box Maker 1, makeabox.io. Okay, so then the next one I want to show you is boxes.py. And so this is a quite thoroughly fleshed out Python-based box generator. You can download, it's open source, so you can download the actual code for this if you want to run it locally or modify it in some way. But then there's also a lot of tools built that run online too. So you can make a bunch of different kinds of boxes right from the web browser. Shelves, wall mounts, different kinds of, like all kinds of stuff. There's a lot to go through here. So I'll just show you a couple. I find it's easier to navigate in this menu system, but we can look at like normal boxes. There's a very like D&D specific dice box. We've got a basic box here that's like a nice smooth open top box, box with angled size, box with a base. There's some neat hinged boxes here if I want to make a box with a hinge on it. So there's a bunch of options there. I'm trying to think what else. Let's look at flex boxes. So flex boxes have one or more rounded sides. And so looking at those, I was like, okay, that's how I could make a box for the Circuit Playground because it's circular, right? It would be weird to put it in a square box. I mean, sure you could. So I'm going to look at the Flex box. So if I click on any of these, it gives me some options I can play with, right? And so over here, I've got some things specific for the Circuit Playground. So the Circuit Playground is 50 millimeters in diameter. And so I'm making this a little bit bigger than that. So I'll have a millimeter all around, X and Y, just so that I want a little bit of wiggle space, right? Like trying to fit something exactly into a box, especially the first go around, can be a little trying on the nerves. So I'm giving myself a little bit of space there. The height is 8 inches, and that's mostly because of that battery jack on there. I can toggle if I want these measurements to be the inside or outside dimension. So I've been thinking about this as inside dimension, so I'm going to leave that unchecked. And then my radius, since this is round, it can't be exactly half of my X and Y. It has to be a little bit less than that because I need some tabs to hold everything together, and those want to go on flat faces. So I'm going to say that a radius of 25, and then my latch size is going to be 2. And that's relative to the thickness of the material. So the thickness here, again, 3 millimeters. Um, and then I can select like my output format, which is really nice. I'm going to go to SVG, etc. So the rest of this I can kind of leave as the default. Hit generate, and that will show me my box shapes, top and bottom, and then the flexi band. And you can see it makes the flexi band by doing this kind of like zigzag S cut that allows the material to bend. So then I can download that and open it up in Illustrator, which I have over here. And then I've done a couple things here that you can see. I've gotten rid of their test box. I could get rid of that here, the reference. If I set this to 0, it'll get rid of that. But it's easy enough just to delete that in Illustrator. Because I wanted to add a couple things here too, like I was mentioning, I'm going to put some holes for the buttons and a hole for the USB port. So how did I know where those things would go? Well, I just went to Adafruit's website, and in their downloads page of the learning resource for the Circuit Playground, they have the schematics for it. They have this PCB layout. So this is where I got the measurements from. It's 2 inches across. That's roughly 50 millimeters. They've got a nice 3D model of it. So I just took that PCB image, brought it into Illustrator, lined it up with my design, and added the circles where the buttons and things were. Pretty straightforward. So once I've got this, then I can go into the makerspace and cut this out on the laser cutter, which I've covered in other videos. So once I have the pieces cut out, it's pretty straightforward task of just aligning them and push fitting them together. If you've got all the settings dialed in right, the material thickness and the curve and the cut speed and power and all that, the box should just press together really nicely like this one. But sometimes it'll be a little tight or a little loose. If it's a little tight, it's hard to deal with. You have to maybe sand the tabs down, but that could take a very long time if you have a lot of tabs. So you might just need to adjust your settings and cut another one. But if it's a little loose, we can just use a little bit of hot glue to tack everything in place, and that's fine as well. So as you see, I've laser cut the box. Here we go. I can use these little tabs on the side to open that up. Slide Circuit Playground in there and close it back up. There's my port. You can barely see the buttons in there. So you need like a toothpick or pencil or something to poke those. I could make some little 1/4-inch dowel plugs to go in there too, so you could access those from the outside. But this is more to protect the CPB than be an interface, but as you can see, it can do both at once. Pretty neat. Resource I wanted to show you was joinery. This is an incredibly powerful tool, but you need to have SVGs first. So this is kind of the opposite. If you know what you're trying to make, but trying to figure out a way to join the pieces together, this can add the tabs for you. There's a very detailed instructable on how to use this tool. So I'm not going to go through it step by step. You can just follow this. But as you can see, you can do things like you can make shoes, you can make bags, you can make really complex geometric shapes. Um, and what you need is, so you need your patterns, right? So you need to have like, what I would do is I'd make like a paper model of something first. I'd unfold that, trace it, bring it into the computer. So I have my paths, right? So they need to be in SVG. Then you indicate which edges are supposed to connect to each other. And then you can select what kind of tab you want, and then you laser cut it and put it together. And that's how that shoe was made. There's a bunch of different kinds of tabs. Sorry for all the scrolling and moving around. Here are some of the different tabs. So you can make like a sewing pattern if you wanted to try to like sew through a thick material where it would be really irritating to punch all the holes by hand, like a thick leather or even like a flexible plastic. You can do these interlocking tabs, which are really neat because you set like the thickness of the material and they just kind of grip together. For flexible materials, you can make darts and loops inserts. That's another good like fabric, semi-rigid fabric or really bendy plastic one. Flaps, finger tabs that we just saw in for wood and things like that, and then these tab inserts that you may be familiar with from like cardboard boxes, or not even cardboard, but chipboard, poster board boxes. So another very powerful tool. So I encourage you to look at MakeBox, Flexbox, and Joinery for coming up with different ways to enclose your projects.